proper free markets and have it so you can just go. You could theoretically just go around killing people. Have it as like an ANCAP game.
I think Victoria 2 has an inbuilt economy and everything. Okay, I've just sent us live as well, so I'm just gonna.
Oh, so now we seem really professional. Cool.
That's all right. Don't really care. Do what I want.
Some of us have fucking standards.
Okay,
Yet to meet them, but some people do.
Okay, well, we'll give people a sec to come in. I've got a few people watching.
Oh.
Hello. So today we are going to be chatting about artificial intelligence. Economic Erudite says sub to Jaws, and that's the correct thing to do. For some reason, Google keeps signing me out of all my YouTube accounts. Hang on.
Silicon Valley is coming for you. First it started on Twitter.
Yes, well, you may notice that today I have a different avatar because I'm Cyber Jaws for the moment. We have the technology; we can rebuild him. I was yeeted for a week, which runs out tomorrow. So at that point, I'll probably try and merge my two accounts together. So I made a quick burner account with this avatar. So if you've seen Cyber Jaws floating around, that's who it is. Let me just. Oh, we got a few people. Nathan Hood, hello. JD's simping for me. Economic Erudite asks when Sam's going to make his own channel.
I don't know yet. I'm toying with a few ideas. I want to, but yeah, I don't really know what I'd do with it. In all honesty, so like I said, I've got a few plans, but nothing as of yet. So stay tuned.
Have you got any no spoilers? I guess from you.
Well, I mean, they are just like floating ideas around, just like self-improvement stuff, but more of like a journalistic sense, using my own sort of personal experience.
You're going to start doing vlogs. Don't become a vlogger.
No, I wouldn't do that. But just subjects which interest me, I guess. Sort of influences in media, that sort of thing, exploring them. Just a way of like getting my own thoughts in order, to be honest, but on a public side.
Sort of personal philosophy as well.
Yeah, that's more the stuff which I'm interested in, sort of getting my own life sorted out, because I don't give a rat's ass about anybody else's.
This has worked for me. If it doesn't work for you, then well, that's because you're not me.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And the CK2 thing, maybe I might join.
Oh, the big game. Well, I think we're playing tonight. If you don't fancy it tonight, then maybe next week.
It's just late. That's the issue.
No, you're just fucking weak. Weak, Sam.
I'm old. That's what it is.
You're younger than me. I think.
only just like a couple of months.
Yeah.
But yeah, I may do. I'll have a think.
I'll keep. I've persuaded him from no to maybe, so we'll keep bullying.
Well, I mean, it's just because my sleeping's fucked anyway, so it's like I'm only in for another week at work, and then I've got a week off. So, and to be honest, now that I've had coffee, I'm probably not going to be sleeping anytime soon. So.
Oh god, I've got to the point where coffee doesn't really affect me anymore. Like I have to have like 3 or 4 a day to, like, before it actually sort of kicks in and I feel buzzed, as opposed to just normal.
Yeah, no, I'm still. Well, it depends on the day, to be honest. Some days I'm really affected by it and have to go walking for like the last couple of weeks. I keep doing this the last couple of weeks. Just have a really big coffee, go out to a coffee shop, do some work or something, and then I'm just there laying in bed at like 10, eyes just wide open, just like I'm not going to fall asleep. So then I go walking for like 6 miles. Like, okay, cool, can go to sleep then.
Yeah, my housemate, he. Like, I'll have like 4 coffees and I'll be not really affected, and he'll have like a cup of tea and he'll be wired. And I'm like, tea makes me feel actively sleepy, not the other way around. Like, not the other way around. Everyone's saying that you're doing BuzzFeed. Go read it out.
Hi, I'm Sam, and this is BuzzFeed Purple. Today, I'm going to explain why R2D2 is a feminist icon.
Definitely clipping that.
Down for it.
Yeah, just sell out completely, become a journalist.
Yeah. Quote unquote journalist. It's BuzzFeed we're talking about.
True. Yeah. Are they still in business? I haven't heard about them in a while, actually.
Either they've quietened down or
They decided to shut the fuck up.
or they've realised everybody hates us.
Pretty much. I don't think even the crazy ones like them. They're just annoying.
No.
Okay, well, we've got a few people joined. Hello, everyone. So should we jump into it, as the YouTubers say?
Go on then.
Where do we want to start then? Because I guess we could start with this this Wikipedia article on machine learning. So there is a slight difference between AI and machine learning. Like AI you tend to refer to the sort of more intelligent, like kind of closing in on sentience, whereas machine learning is more specific for business applications, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, just different levels of the same thing, more or less.
So I guess what the sort of things we're going to talk about is we can do a bit about the sort of real life machine learning methods, how they work, what they are. I'll do my best to explain. I think neural networks is the one that I know the best from what I've done in my day job, which I'll try not to dox myself too much in what I do for a living.
Software engineering.
Let's go with that. Yeah, let's go with that. And then I guess we can start going into the more like speculative stuff, sort of what we might see in the future. The sort of how do we live alongside intelligent AI? Is Skynet realistic?
Yes. It's coming for us, and you should be very afraid.
The AI gods, and then there's something I definitely want to look at is AI racist? Because I think that's just such a funny topic. I think it's just so funny.
It's so ridiculous.
We're going to rip off Harry and look at some Guardian articles, I reckon.
Christ.
I found a few. So should we have a go? Should we have a look, man?
Yeah, let's go.
So, yeah, okay. Machine learning is more to do with specific algorithms. There are a lot of different algorithms. I'll go over a few. I don't know in detail how they work, but I'll basically say where they're used. Actually, one thing I do need to find quickly is I had
organized as always.
Bear with us. Yeah, exactly. Bear with a sec. I had a document that I worked on at work that I was just gonna like steal some of my own explanations from because I've forgotten them because it's been a while.
Yeah, don't show it in case your name's on it.
No, it's all right. It's on the other screen. Yeah, well, exactly. And my company and everything. I'm being careful which browser tabs I use.
Yeah, if the stream immediately drops.
Yeah, so I wrote this paper at work essentially to do some research on artificial intelligence, well, machine learning more, and I kind of wrote it as a bit of a flex on one of my colleagues. Because he was like, okay, you obviously there's a lot of the maths behind it. I helped a guy who hadn't. So we had a guy who worked for a while with us doing some research into machine learning, and he was doing these online courses as well. And one of them had a lot of maths in it. And he was a comp sci graduate, and he was like, he was complaining to me about it, like, I don't understand the maths. Like, this is too complicated for me. And I was like, well, why don't I have a look? And I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is familiar. It's not too far away from some of the stuff that I showed off in my stream with Jack the other week, like the matrices and the calculus of different multidimensional surfaces and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is familiar. So I just helped him with that, and then I decided to write this paper to flex on him.
Yeah, to be honest, I think that's one of the reasons I've strayed away from looking at machine learning too much, because I cannot stand doing matrices.
It's piss easy. It's all like fucking linear algebra stuff.
Yeah, but just as soon as I see matrices, I just get flashbacks to second year uni. I'm like, oh god, I don't want to go back to it.
I was looking at the. I mean, I'll talk about it later. But when we have a look at neural networks, which is the sort of thing that I've looked into more deeply, that's like I could talk about how you could basically translate it into a giant matrix, but I won't.
Yeah, but does anybody really care about that?
Does anybody really care exactly? Okay, so we'll go from here. So the idea is that you have, so machine learning is a sort of subtext of the subset of the overall process of overall subject of artificial intelligence. you've got this model, quote unquote, that you kind of pass it data so that it learns, and then once it's learned from the data, from there you can basically ask it, if I give it a little bit of data, what does it say about that data? So you give it sort of sample inputs and what those inputs mean as an output, and then you give it like a test input and say, right, suggest me an output based on what you know. In the same way that you pass data to a mathematical function and it will give you an output, but that will be the same every time. So this is quite good because it goes over the sort of 3 types of machine learning that we have. So what we have is supervised learning first. So what you do, this is what I just said was an example of supervised learning. So you give it a load of inputs and their corresponding outputs, and then you pass it another input later on, and you say, give me an output that matches up compared to the other inputs.
So it'll learn the pattern. Basically.
What you've got to be careful of, though, is this is more of a sort of business idea, is when you're looking for something to use AI for, or machine learning for, what you don't want is something that uses very simple if-else logic, right? So you don't want it to basically say, if this is true, then just give me the same output every time, right? You need something that's kind of non-trivial. So you need a lot of variables that may or may not be related. And then you say, based on all these, give me some output. So an image is a good one. So you pass it like a bit string that just contains all the data for the image, and obviously that's a lot of data, a lot of data to search through. But similar images will give similar outputs, presumably, and it'll be able to kind of non-trivially figure that out. So it learns. So this says here the goal is to learn a general rule that maps inputs to outputs. That's quite useful for sort of classification, that sort of thing. Unsupervised learning is different in that you basically give it just the inputs, that you don't give it any sample outputs, and it kind of categorizes the inputs based on how similar they are. So it's not as, you use it for different situations. You say, do I want to, categorization, basically you end up with clusters of similar inputs. I think k-nearest neighbor is a very, very simple algorithm that uses this. So you basically, you have all your inputs as one great big kind of vector, and however you basically translate it into a vector in space. So if you have an input which is just like 6 numbers, you translate that into a 6-dimensional vector and you plot them all together and you see which ones are clustered together in 6-dimensional space, if that makes any sense at all.
To me it does.
you just use Pythagoras. It's all fucking Pythagoras.
But 6-dimensional.
Yeah, so as you know, if you go and watch Jack's stream with, if you go and watch Jack's stream with me the other day, you'll realize that Pythagoras
I don't watch anything with you in it unless I'm in it also.
you just keep adding dimensions. You say like a squared plus b squared, a squared plus b squared plus c squared, and then you just keep adding. Yeah, literally. Like as you go up in dimensions, you just keep adding another plus whatever squared on the end.
Fair. I guess it's just something I never really thought about.
I mean, you could think. I mean, you could think about it with 3D quite easily. Glorified systems of linear equations, pretty much. A lot of the, you got to be careful with especially with marketing departments and sales departments, is that they will get something that's essentially some clever statistics and say, oh, we can do AI, we can we can automate everything with artificial intelligence, and it's like, I mean, it's cool in its own right, but it's stretching the definition of AI or machine learning or whatever.
And for most things that they try to advertise it for, it's not worth it.
It's really not worth it. What we found is it's very hard to have a situation where you actually genuinely need machine learning. So a lot of the time, companies will basically say, "Oh, we need to." Our marketing department wants us to say that we're doing machine learning because it looks cool and it's clever, and people will be more willing to buy what we sell if we say that we use AI or ML or whatever. So they basically try and shoehorn it in, or shoehorn in something that you can plausibly call AI, and people will lap that up. So what you obviously should be doing from a business case is you say, oh, we have this really hard problem, we need AI to solve this, not saying we have AI, we need a problem to solve with it, which is a whole thing in itself
Right.
that drives me nuts. So then the last one is reinforcement learning, which is probably my favorite. It's like the coolest one. I haven't really done anything with this in real life.
The most interesting.
So yeah, so you have a program in a sort of simulated environment where it does tasks, and depending on whether the tasks are, depending on whether it does what you want it to do, you reward it or not, based on your definition of a reward.
Yeah.
Or punish it if it does something wrong.
You'll set
Same way as you train a dog or something.
More or less, yeah. You'll set it a target to go and achieve. If it gets close to that target, you reward it. If it does something which detracts from that, then you start to punish it, and then it'll actively start avoiding the things which punish it. And
Exactly.
The rewards. There are issues.
So this is the most kind of similar to how we think of artificial intelligence. You imagine having some sort of robot dog that does this, say.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a lot, I guess, less complicated than this. I mean, we can have a look at that, the baritone AI, I suppose, for this.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe we should leave that till later when we talk about Skynet.
This is trading Skynet.
Actually, we'll find it. So this is a tangent, but it's funny to talk about.
It's not like us to go on tangents.
That's fine. So, yeah, this is there's a Minecraft server, a public server called Baritone, called 2B2T, and it's like what it says here. Actually, it's an anarchy server, quote unquote, where there's no rules. You can basically do what you want. And it has a lot of people, and everything's just fucked. Yeah, like the whole map is just destroyed.
Hacking as well, and it's just like
people do hack it in grief and all sorts of things, but some guy, some nutter, basically programmed a load of AI bots to kill players and release them into the world. And basically he used his own reinforcement AI, so he had obviously his own Minecraft world offline where he trained these bots to move a character around in the game and hunt other characters using this reinforcement learning. And then he logged onto 2B2T with that account and just let the thing go. And he obviously trained, you can see here, it's got the pathfinding. These bots have got way better pathfinding than any human, so they can just chase you so much better. They can parkour around.
Yeah, they're just not going to make mistakes.
And that's called Baritone. Yeah, I think I had a video actually, because they're actually sick.
Say before when you were telling me about this is like how a Minecraft version of those backflipping robots that we had in there.
Yeah, so that they can also play. They can. Oh, fuck off! Sorry, Steve's giving me an advert. Because it's a Google one, it lasts the whole length as well, and it's such a cringe advert as well.
Show me an advert which isn't cringe.
Oh, it's true. So you can see it's placing blocks to move around as well, so it's making bridges and things too, so it knows what to do. But this is
I thought he was typing in chat then.
No.
It's also
so you can see
it to chat shit.
I don't know whether you can see. There's a bit where like here where he shows it off because it's got its own UI. It's kind of oh fucking hell. I need to install AdBlock on this. I've got a separate Chrome install for this user. I need to put an ad blocker on it. Really, give it a sec. So yeah, you can see it's training itself here in its own world.
Yeah, because it's not got.
And you can see it's placing blocks. It's mining. You can just leave it to do whatever. And you see it's got all this pathfinding. So it's like a Terminator vision, really. Where it like highlights people and sort of augmented reality on top of it.
Yeah, and
I just think this is really cool.
Just so refined, like
so you can see it's figuring out the path to go in real time, because obviously having been trained on what is a good path, obviously not running off a cliff, it's figured out how to get to its destination way faster than a human would. And as you can see, it can place blocks and mine stuff to get out of the way.
I mean, there's still like little things there, which is just like I think it was on like a one block.
Yeah, you can see there it was like flickering around, looking.
Yeah,
you see that where it was kind of flickering around, trying to find a new path. Yeah, see that. But yeah, that's the sort of thing that you can come up with. That's an example, I guess, of reinforcement learning.
Yeah, well, I mean, what it was probably doing there is sort of like doing like several different paths. So like it'll have its main path, which is the best one that it's got so far, and then I'm assuming when it enters it renders a new chunk, it'll almost like send out other agents,
sort of feelers.
Yeah, and then it'll have that information, and it'll be able to say, "All right, this was the quickest one that was doing it. Right, we're going to run this path." Once we get
but for real, like you can imagine that's way better than a human could do.
Oh yeah, 100%, because it knows
like,
ahead of time.
They had quite a few. They had quite a few like invasions of these bots where the guy would just release them. Actually, the code
just attach that to drones.
Self-driving cars, another one. I swear I had a mate who.
Well, I was talking about Code Bullet just before we went live. And yeah, he's
yes, you were. Yes,
I really enjoyed watching him. That was sort of the guy.
Yeah. So
I learned a lot of AI stuff.
Shout out to Code Bullet then for AI. I swear I had a mate who.
Never watched this. He's got 1.5 million subs.
I'm just providing him a platform. You know, I'm giving him some exposure.
Just looking out for him. Just that nice of a man.
See, you're welcome, mate. I was going to say, yeah, I knew a guy who basically was trying to. I think it was his dissertation for comp sci, because so many comp sci dissertations are all AI stuff, like teaching an AI to this, to do that. And he basically got it to play a racing game.
Right.
So he obviously simulated the inputs to the whatever it was, PS4 game or a PC game. I think it was Forza or something like that.
Jesus, simulating Forza is quite impressive.
And basically simulate all the inputs and get it to drive around a course.
The control system for that's going to be mental, because there's so many different things that they throw at that.
Yeah. It's quite hard even as a human to play that game.
Yeah, exactly.
To be fair, I haven't played it since I was quite young, so that's probably the reason.
Yeah, that's also true. But I mean, imagine that the more recent ones still have things like drag and friction from different types of wheels and all of that, different bodies. And
Yeah.
Things. So that's quite impressive.
I think you're always surprised about how impressive they are, even with not very much sort of complexity to them.
Yeah.
You really kind of appreciate how, because you start seeing emergent patterns and emergent behaviors appearing in this really simple thing, and you're like, "Fuck! Imagine what would happen if you had 100 billion, if you had 100 billion like nodes." And then you're like, "Oh shit, that's the human brain."
Just another one which I've remembered, like something like I think is it a guy called Seth Bling did Minecraft, not Minecraft, Mario, Super Mario.
Maybe I saw that because he did like a perfect run with it.
Yeah, and it was just like
Mario Bros.
It was pixel perfect, just super speed run. It was dead impressive.
Yeah, it's mad. Okay, so we talked about some examples here. We can go through these quickly. I mean, we've talked about supervised learning. This is what I said about the like clustering things. So this is just two-dimensional space here, and you basically plot them. I'll open this up.
Peasant space.
Yeah. 2D is for peasants. You plot them on and you can see that you would see in this case as a human looking at it, you'd be like, oh, they're clustered together, right? Mm-hmm. But for an AI, you kind of have to say, well, how do we define a cluster? Like how close do they have to be to define a cluster? And obviously the distance between them you work out with Pythagoras.
Yeah.
And then you can define vectors that kind of divide these clusters up. Obviously, in three-dimensional space, you could imagine you'd have like slices through the surface, through the cubed space to divide up the clusters in 3D. And then later on, you can assign, well, because this doesn't actually get any meaning. All it tells you is that these data points are close together and that they are a feature in themselves. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't tell you what that feature means in real life. Like you have as a person to go label that and say, this means something's good, this means something's fucked. Say.
Yes. Yeah, all it's doing is sort of converting real world information into numbers. And then...
Well, that's what a lot of the data science... I mean, that's data science, isn't it? Basically, just finding ways to reformat your data so that it can be easily... or cleaning it, reformatting it, so that it can be easily dealt with by algorithms. Self-learning, feature learning. I mean, this is all a bit specific, to be honest. Models. Oh, I mean, I could talk about neural networks a bit. Yeah. Because again, this is something that I just happen to have learnt about a bit and done a bit of the theory of.
Yeah,
So I can kind of explain that, give you more of an idea.
Yeah.
So, actually, I realized I'm sharing the wrong window. So if I quickly reshare, I did a couple of diagrams. So this is just lifted from a report I wrote at work, so it took about 5 minutes. Okay, so this is probably the most simple kind of neural network that we can reasonably work with.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea behind this neural network is that it behaves similarly to how a human brain works. So it's obviously inspired by biology, where you have, I can't remember what way around it is, but you have like axons, dendrons, synapses, that sort of thing. And what you essentially have is these cells which are connected to other cells via synapses, I think. And then you pass electrical pulses through them, and they kind of spread out through the network and are passed on or not, depending on the cell. And you end up with sort of complex behavior happening. So again, this is what happens here, is that you have, on the left here, we have what's called the input layer. And this is made up here, in this example, it's just made up of two what we call nodes. So I've called them X1 and X2. And then over here we have our output layer. They are A1 and A2. Now, these nodes can take just a value. So it could be 3, it could be 7, it could be 1,000,000. Normally, again, with your data, you kind of want to compress your data into something that's easily fittable into this form where you just have like numbers. So if you wanted to take in an image, you'd probably convert each pixel into like an RGB value, say, and then read it in as like one long string going down the lines of your image. That's one example. I'm sure there's clever ways of doing it than that, but that's just what I could think of off the top of my head. So you'd have a great big input layer there with sort of hundreds of nodes. So the idea is you pass in, so you give each of your input nodes a value, and then that leads to, through some interactions with the joins between them, that the output nodes have a value. So you can do a bit of linear algebra. So obviously connected. So what we've got here is a fully connected one, which means that every node is connected to every other node in the next layer. So you can see X1 is connected to both of them, X2 is connected to both of them. If there was one missing, say, that wouldn't be fully connected. So what we have connecting them are what's called weights. That's why I've called them W. So connecting 1 to 1 is 1, 1, 1 to 2 is 1, 2, etc., etc. If you know anything about linear algebra, you could see matrix maths coming into play here, but I won't go there. Also associated with each node in the output layer is what's called a bias. Again, this is just a number. These are all just numbers. These symbols here.
It's the only thing computers can understand.
Pretty much, yeah. It's nothing complicated. It's just like a little scalar value. So if we scroll down, we've got a more complicated one here. So what I've included now is what's called a hidden layer. So again, this is fully connected. You have your input layer, and that's connected to everything in the middle, and that's connected to here. So what you do is, again, you give your input layer some values, and then from there, it kind of bounces through the hidden layer to the output layer. So I think I wrote this down somewhere. So how do we work out what the values of the nodes in the hidden layer are and then in the output layer? Let me just find what I had up earlier.
I don't know. How do we do that?
How do we find this out? Well, I'm glad you asked. So it's quite simple. So in fact, I'll work it out for this one because it's just easier to kind of fit on the screen. So there's some text here. So A1 is equal to, so what you do is you take so if you're working out the value of a node in one layer, then you look at the previous layer and you add up all the nodes multiplied by the connection to the node you're looking at in the output layer, if that makes sense. So for an example here, so we're trying to work out this value, so we look at the previous layer and we go, right, well, it's x1 multiplied by the connection to this one, which is W11. We add that to the other one, x2 multiplied by the connection, which is this one here, which is W21. and then you add on the bias. Easy. Same with the other one.
Simples. Right.
So the other one would be, if I write that out quickly, so that'd be A2 is equal to x1 times the connection between them, which is W12, added to x2 times the connection between them, which is W22, and then add the bias. You can see, as was noted in the chat earlier, this is just a system of linear equations. Glorified system of linear equations. Yeah, it's a nice way of viewing it. And obviously, as you can see, if I start putting in hidden layers, it gets way more complicated. So here we've only got two. We've got two here. We've got 4 weights, 2 nodes, 2 biases. Here we've got fucking like 12 weights, 3 other nodes, way more biases. It gets a lot more complicated very quickly.
Yeah.
And you can see if we wanted to tweak what a given output was for a given input, what we'd have to do is just kind of tweak these values very slightly. So say we upped, our algorithm gave, or our evaluation of this network gave us an output that we don't like. We can say, well, we reckon actually x1 is more important, so we're just gonna tweak w1 and w12 to make it, obviously when you times it together, make it give more of a have more of an impact on what your final answer is. Hopefully that makes some sense. So again, you do the same here. You start tweaking all these different values, and that's what you use actual machine learning algorithms for, which is not something I know very much about or anything really.
No, but you can sort of extrapolate from what you've explained.
Yeah. So another thing that you can do is each layer, you have this thing called the activation function, which is normally written as some function g of yi, which I being just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, so one of the nodes. So that can be like some sort of exponential function, some sort of function that leaves you with, another example would be one that gives you, say you end up with y1 being negative. Well, you say, right, we're going to add this activation function that makes it 0 if it's negative, but keeps the same value if it's positive. So it kind of cuts off the negative ones. You can have ones that kind of sort of force it down so that they all add up to 1, that sort of thing. That's quite useful for your final output. Again, these are just sort of very carefully chosen activation functions. If you're a data scientist, you'll know when to use them. It's not something I'm particularly familiar with. So this isn't actually like that useful in practice, because you can see every time for a given value of all of these different parameters, if ever I assign x1 and x2 a value, it's going to evaluate through, and a1 and a2 are going to end up with the same output, which, is not that useful. That's just a function, really. What makes this more dynamic and makes this more intelligent is we can use other machine learning algorithms, which we call optimizers, to basically give an output. You say, how wrong is this, quote unquote. Wrong being defined by something called a loss function. So you give your output to the loss function. It tells you how wrong that is or how right that is, and then based on that, you use an optimizer algorithm, there's loads of those. You can Google those if you want, to kind of tweak all these different values of the network to make it do a better result next time.
Yeah. So
what you got to do is, this is maybe kind of obvious to data scientists, but perhaps not otherwise, is if you're using, so the optimizer will also what I said about the loss function, where it tells you how wrong it is. Well, how do you know how wrong something is? You have to compare it to training data, which is what we talked about earlier, where you pass it a load of inputs and their corresponding outputs in the real world, and then you give it to your loss function, and you say, how wrong is this? How right is this compared to what we want? So you use training data. What you've got to be careful to do, though, is not to use the same data that you trained it with to test it with. that's the equivalent of, rather than going to take an exam, you basically memorize the answer. You get a copy of the exam the day before and memorize every answer. If that makes sense. It's the equivalent. Yeah, you're learning by repetition rather than actually understanding it.
Yeah.
So you can't extrapolate from what you know.
Yeah.
Hopefully that makes some sort of sense, but that's a kind of a vague example of what we're talking about. So, have you got anything to add to that?
No, I'm just sort of enjoying it, to be honest.
Cool. That could be another lecture from me. I will just stop sharing that and then reshare with this window here. So yeah, there's a few different. That's just one type. Neural networks is something that's used a lot. So you got these artificial. Yeah, you see here, you got these inputs hidden and output. You got these artificial neurons. It's not a direct one-to-one correlation with real life neurons and axons and stuff in the brain, but it's a good approximation for what's used in computers. So this is the sort of thing: is you build your network, you train it, and then you kind of have it stored on your computer, so you can then go and ask it questions whenever you need it, whenever you need to. So once it's built and stored and trained, you just have it sat there, and then you can have a piece of a program that gathers information from other places, and then at times where it needs to extract some meaning from that data, it will go to your network, which you've got saved somewhere, and say, "What do I do with this information?" And the network will give you an output.
Process it and give it.
Yeah. It's quite cool ways of doing it. Where is if you're more into the tech side, where you can wrap up a network into like a REST API, and then just store it on some server, and then anyone else can just ping that server and get responses from your network. It's kind of like a remote robot brain.
Like Skynet.
Yeah, Skynet's getting API requests from nuclear launch sites. It's obviously basic authentication, yeah.
Yes. So, what if it learns how to do those capture things? We're all screwed.
Yeah, I am not a robot, I promise.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, decision trees are another one. I don't know very much about those, but they are more like kind of binary trees that it goes down and says, is it this, is it that, is it the other? And it tweaks the... Well, it obviously you apply algorithms to kind of tweak the nodes and the questions that are asked. So it does learn over time.
It sounds like a flatter version of the neural network.
Kind of. It does have its uses. It's quite useful in chatbots, for example, that they use decision trees a lot. Okay. So support vector is, I think, similar to what I set up here, where you kind of slice it, cutting off different things that are clustered together. Regression analysis. This is just some fancy stats. It's kind of learning, but I mean, it's more of a data science tool for that sort of thing.
Regression is the one I know.
Yeah.
I've heard of, I should say. I don't know anything.
I mean, it's kind of it's an algorithm that's useful. This one's quite cool. How's that pronounced? Bayesian.
Can't quite see it on the screen.
Zoom in.
I'm not sure.
I'll zoom in a bit. It's kind of bit. Yeah, so they kind of relate. It's more useful for kind of processing text, where you relate words together by their meanings, sort of. Kind of. So the example here is quite a good one. So a sprinkler will make the grass wet. Rain will make the grass wet. But a lack of rain will also cause the sprinkler to turn on. It's a way of kind of relating things together.
Yeah. Nice.
So as it says here, it's to do. You can do it with diseases. So that based on what protein sequence, what diseases are likely to be vulnerable to, that sort of thing.
Code. It's always
code.
It's the only thing which exists anymore.
Genetic algorithms are quite cool.
Yes,
at some point. The kind of second choice for the presentation I was going to give Jack was on this sort of thing, which is similar to a project I did at uni on disease modeling, actually.
At this point that you didn't do that, I was looking forward to that.
Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll do it myself at some point. I mean, we could do a whole episode on epidemiology if you feel like really researching something, because that
Jesus. See, I feel like that's yeah, trying to defuse a bomb.
we're asking to be cancelled.
Epidemiology at the moment.
Well, it's quite. I mean, okay, so it was a group project that I did. So my section was on epidemiology, but the other guys were doing just a lot of kind of pure maths, working out specific kind of properties of these mathematical objects we were working with. And one guy basically took some genetic algorithms and used them to kind of breed complexity into this mathematical model that we were working on.
Yeah,
it was really cool. I really wish we had the code left because we lost the code after I think we had it on old laptops and stuff. It wasn't in the cloud or anything.
Jesus, what are you? Bloody
it was really cool. So, have you heard of cellular automata?
No.
You heard of Conway's Game of Life?
Nope.
This is a tangent, but it's kind of, you get emergent phenomena coming out. Conway's Game of Life. Yeah, this sort of thing.
Oh yes, no, I have. Yes, I have.
Oh my god, it's in
I think
Minecraft.
I made one of them at one point.
Yeah, so it's like so you have these different cells on a board, and every step in time, the cells around that cell take on a value based on the value of that cell, right? If that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And Conway's Game of Life is just like one rule set, which gives you all these crazy complex patterns, like this sort of shit, which I'm sure they'll... Oh, fuck off, adverts. I really need to install an ad blocker on here.
That's that. Next time we're like backstage. Actually, no, after this. I'm going to force you to get one.
Yeah, so it's another browser that I have open. Can we have some cool... Yeah, so you end up with these weird things that move around, because, again, it's every step in time. Yeah, okay, so this is a quite a famous one. I can't remember what it's called. It's like a breeder or something. And these are called spaceships that fly off. So what the aim of our investigation was is that, okay, Conway's Game of Life is just one example of a set of rules. And you can work out exactly how many rules sets there are. It's just some combinatorics of, you got 8 things surrounding one square. How many possible values can it have? And what we were trying to do is figure out, well, how can we... these particular rules kind of coalesce here to make some incredibly complex stuff. Can we find another rule set that coalesces to make some incredibly complex stuff? You get like emergent complexity appearing. And that's what my colleague was trying to do, is that he was basically making a genetic algorithm to try and breed rule sets by seeing how complex they were. I mean, this is a mad one. Like, they're kind of building little spaceships which fly off as soon as they meet certain criteria. What the fuck's happened? Sorry, I'm just getting distracted by the
pretty shapes.
By the pretty shapes. It's quite a simple thing to code yourself, to be honest. If you have any experience programming.
I have made one before. Very small one, but yeah, I've done it.
Yeah, so he used a genetic algorithm. So he'd come up with a couple of rule sets. He would have some way of working out how complex they were. I think it was some entropy thing he was measuring.
Right. And
then based on how complex the ones that he sort of randomly generated were, he would breed them together to create another one. Fuck me, what's this?
What the hell?
But yeah, this is all from like a couple of different rules. So you get all this emergent complexity from like 2 or 3 different little rules about, is this greater than that or is that greater than this?
What's that shape? 3rd one? 4th one?
No comment. You get this shit. But you end up with basically little agent complexity, I guess. I mean, it's kind of funny, but this is kind of something that, in some ways, a little bit of a red pill. In that you don't need a crazy amount of rules to regulate everything to have emergent complexity going on.
Does your mind just work in one direction?
No.
How do you manage to get back to that? Jesus.
Again, no comment. Okay, yeah, that's a bit of an aside, but genetic algorithms are cool. They're very cool. Like, you take... What the fuck is this? Like you take two things that you define as successful and you kind of breed them together in a certain way, and the offspring of them take on some kind of randomized traits of the original ones,
Right.
and obviously from there you can keep them or breed them more or whatever. Okay, this is hurting my head a bit. I'll turn that off.
Didn't drink so much.
Okay, so that's a bit of an aside on genetic algorithms. Yeah, so training, I talked about overfitting, which is when I said you don't want to train it to just repeat things. You want to train it to actually learn and to be able to extrapolate. Yeah, so this is the sort of, that's basically the end of that. So do you have anything to add to that, Sam? I'm trying to look through my notes and what...
I don't particularly know too much about the learning algorithms specifically. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of benefits. There's several ways to do it. Typically, you'll set off, say, 1,000, 10,000, whatever your computer can handle, and obviously depending on what you're doing. To basically just process these mathematical algorithms. Because basically everything that's happening is all your inputs and outputs are broken down into maths, and computers are fantastic at processing basic things like that. So you get seemingly complicated things like the Minecraft one that we were looking at. In reality, all the computers see, like we're seeing all this massive output of this character jumping around on all these blocks and things, something which we find quite difficult to replicate as humans. But all it's seeing is these mathematical numbers and just making things equal different things. At the end of the day, that's all it can be broken down to. The impressive part is when you can just program something and say, this is the goal I want you to achieve. These are the tools that I can give you that you can use to get to that goal. But if you do these things, we'll punish you. And then just
give you a zap.
Yeah, give you a zap. Punch in the face.
Get my belt.
Up against the wall. Right. But yeah, it'll just start avoiding the things which it's scared of and go for the things which bring it happiness, which make Daddy happy.
I'm trying to think.
Makes me excited.
I'm just looking.
Because the thing is like if you are capable of transferring something into just raw data, you can. So like we could go on to something like robotics, because a lot of like control, with a lot of stuff which I've done in university and work now, is also to do with control. And that's basically systems where it's inputs and outputs, and you've got a little black box in the middle which you've got to figure out what's happening.
That's your model, isn't it?
Yeah, that's your model. So the entire thing is, say if we're doing it for something like robotics, your inputs would track the I don't know what sort of input you could have, but like a distance sensor, something like that.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it is
signals, and then you convert that into digital data which a computer can read. That goes through.
Yeah, you wouldn't just want the distance sensor, because the idea is that you give it a lot of data that you may not see as related.
This is a very very simple example.
Because obviously, if it's distance, then you can just do, if the distance is too little, stop.
Yes.
Or something like that. So you give it
several distances, so you could have 3 dozen of these distance sensors, which it's got to be able to all around it, so it can track its distances from walls around it, and then that way it can make its way through a maze or a building or a city if it was a car. So
yeah,
it's scalable, but you can still use it on
I guess
scale as you want.
A thing with the clustering, what's that, Colin, is that you can pass it data that you may or may not realize is relevant. So you pass it all of the data, and it
might not seem like it's got a pattern to you.
Yeah. So to a human, it might not say it's got a pattern, but to the computer, it will plot it in these different dimensions, and it will and you'll look at it and you go, oh, there's a clustered, even though it may not be obvious to you.
Yeah. Which the supervised stuff's very good at doing.
Yeah. So that's the stuff conversations I was having with at work is like, well, if you have data, so what's an example? If you're trying to monitor a network, say to see whether like a computer network to see if stuff's going to crash, you want to pass it like, I don't know, CPU usage, memory usage, all these different things. But then you can start passing it like random stuff like network traffic, like other things that may or may not be relevant, but the AI will pick up patterns if there are any there.
Yeah.
So you kind of, there's a little bit of guesswork involved in what you pass it. Because if you start passing stuff that is genuinely irrelevant, then it's going to start messing things up.
Yeah, but I mean, depending on your, because usually you're not just going to throw raw data in there. There's going to be some sort of cleaning.
No, you've got to sort of scrub it. Yeah, I mean, an example that I've seen is
get rid of anomalies and things like that.
Yeah. An example I've seen is rather than passing like a passage of text, you basically take the passage of text, take every word, and you basically alphabetize the whole thing. And for every word, you store what the word previously is to it, what the word after it is, what position it is in the text, what type of word it is, like verb, noun, adjective, whatever.
Right.
And other words it may be related to, that sort of thing. And then from there, that's way better for the computer to deal with, rather than just giving it a lot of text.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely think that we could just do an entire episode of just data scrubbing, because
that's most of the site. That's most of the implementation. Because
and
we've got
as well.
Yeah.
A lot of like, I think one of like the classic examples of like supervised and non-supervised learning is like pictures of like cats and hats, and then it determines it. But it's like to process that, it will figure out shapes. So then what you're trying to do is simplify it. So one of the examples, a guy called Code Train, I think his name is, sort of like went through examples, and he was like going through each pixel on the page, and basically if it was above a certain colour, or if it something like the surroundings of a picture, you were able to tell whether it was a certain shape, or like the prominent shape in it. Which was sort of ruining the explanation of, but it eventually got it down to the stage where the actual shape of the objects that you were looking at, so whether it was a cat or a hat, it'd turn it into white, whereas everything which was irrelevant was in black. So then eventually what it'd be learning was that pattern of squares.
The sort of silhouette, yeah.
Yeah. But it's gone from thousands of little pixels, which were all had different values of different squares and things, to very, very simple things. But obviously, because we're not seeing it, it makes far more sense to the computer than it does us, which I think's, like I say, I think it's probably the most difficult part of this. Because once you've got your algorithm going, that's
well, exactly. Like once you've got your, I mean, the coding. If you want to get into the coding of it, like if you just install TensorFlow, making a model is about 3 lines of code.
Yeah.
You just like create a model with these parameters, it creates it, and then you go train it with this data, it trains it, and then you test it with this other data, and then it tests it. It's like making the model is not the hard part. The hard part is getting the data in the right format for the model.
Yeah.
And actually getting hold of data in the first place.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of brings me on to so Google and Amazon do have their own sort of AI as a service things, but sorry. All right. The issue with them is that if you create your model or whatever in Google's service, if you pass it a load of data, they then own that data, which is obviously a bit of a bitch if you're a company trying to do this in reality.
Yeah.
So we had a kind of initiative we were thinking about is, well, is there a way for us to do basically all of the AI stuff in Google's cloud-based AI thing, apart from we have to have some sort of internal model that can anonymize all our data. So you'd have a model that basically reads through a document, say, and it picks out all the names, all the email addresses, all the phone numbers, whatever, and replaces them with kind of generic names, emails, and phone numbers. Which kind of, because you don't want to replace it with like redacted or XYZ or whatever, because that doesn't maintain the meaning that you're after if you weren't going to analyze it. So you replace like Sam with John Smith or something. So it would know that is an individual person. That's a name. You replace all phone numbers with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess we've kind of exhausted the sort of how is it used right now
Technical side, yeah.
technical side. Yeah, I guess do we want to
How's it gonna
talk?
kill us, Josh?
How is it going to kill us? Okay,
Should
we
we
can
talk
talk
about
about.
how it kills us and then how it's racist?
Yeah, so we've got all the goods. We've done all the good real life stuff. That's a kind of crash course. Um,
Now we're about to
yeah,
straight
I guess so.
forward
So
to
we're
your
imagining
movies.
in the future this technology because we've seen some emergent stuff, especially with the the Minecraft in Minecraft is doing pretty well. Um, we're imagining that this gets more and more complicated, and it gets more and more kind of comparable to real thought, however you define that.
Mhm.
Um, and at some point, you're saying, "Hey, this is comparable in complexity to a human brain," and it kind of wakes up. That's always the story. That it kind of one day wakes up. I guess this is this is again I'm gonna do another fucking reference to the moon is a harsh mistress
Ah,
because that's like the first scene is that happening. Is like the AI controlling the moon colony kind of wakes up and initiates contact with the technician that's working on it, and he's like shit. But that's kind of my
it's on the
thinking is
list.
that sorry.
It's on the list.
Yeah, yeah. Chidi says she discussed when the AI examines our economic policy. Well, it'll know all
We'll
about
look on the
emotion.
search history, to be honest.
It needs a concept of disappointment.
Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what if you give it your search history as training data? What
It
conclusions
won't
would it
want to
come to?
wake up.
What would it suggest as a when you go to test it?
Just clean Christian women.
Right. Okay. I guess at
Just
that
doing
point.
housework or something.
Well, I mean, that's literally what is happening here. Like, it's looking at my search history if I type something in. Like, it's suggesting me new things to look at, isn't it? Like, if I type into
Yeah,
Google,
yeah, yeah. Well, that is all
that's
AI
literally all it
based
is. Because
recommendations.
it's obviously the data isn't just like who are you, because
Um,
that's quite a similar database.
mm,
And like, if this then that, they're also looking at where you are, like
who
who
you're
are the people
following.
who are similar to you.
Yeah. Have you ever
Search
gone on
for.
to Instagram and seen what the types of things they
Oh my
think you're
god, yeah,
interested
it's
in?
hilarious. It thinks I'm some sort of redneck gun nut.
For me, I think it was like mountain climbing and women squatting, which isn't it. It's like looking at people that I want to look like and the girls that I want to be interested in. It's like not inaccurate, and then just a spattering of like golden retrievers or something. Like you've actually nailed me.
Instagram is one of the ones where you can actually go and look and see what tags it gives you. I guess,
Yeah,
which is quite funny. Um, oh
terrifying. I
God.
think's the word. What would be
Yeah,
interesting to see is if you did nothing else on Instagram but did the DMs, would you be able to change it based on who you're DMing? Because then that means they're reading your DMs.
there's probably some way to automate that test. Yeah,
Mm.
I
Yeah,
don't know
there's an
whether.
Instagram API.
Imagine if the Terminator was sent back just to shame you of your search history, like rather than taking on the form of Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's like just your mum or your dad or something.
Just with a bell. Just shame.
Ding ding.
Shame.
I guess yeah. So well, I mean, AI is starting to get used more in military stuff. I'm sure for sort of targeting and that.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know what the military has.
Well, facial recognition.
But that's true. Actually, yeah, facial recognition is one,
When
and we
we were
talked about
talking
that
in
a few weeks
in
ago. Yeah,
second episode,
on
that's one of the things they're looking towards, like target acquisition. The sniper attached to a drone. If that those two combined, that's it. That's
yeah, yeah.
Obama's dream.
There's ideas behind what sort of control systems as well,
Mm.
like a sort of self healing. I don't know, ship, say. So the ship detects something's wrong, and it automatically goes to figure out what to do to fix it. Um,
Yeah, quite cool.
that
You could
sort
have
of
it with
idea.
drones, reconnaissance.
Yeah, yeah. Um, my thinking is, well, I mean, the idea of giving all your nuclear arsenal to an AI
I'd rather not. To be perfectly honest,
would
some
rather
things
not.
should stay sacred.
But But then again, if China decides to do it, then like
Yeah,
they're going to have faster reaction times than you.
that's true. But when it's traveling continentally,
Yeah, but
I
they're
still
fucking
think you're gonna be
quick.
able to react.
They are. I mean, that the detection systems I think are quite advanced, but I mean, I guess they got satellites watching on the launch sites, but they can't know where they all are.
It's true.
I think in America they move them around as well. They have them on trains and things. And obviously, if they're on submarines like the UK's, then how do you know where they are?
That's also true.
That's the point of the Trident program: is you can just park your submarine off the coast of somewhere, and obviously, if the UK gets nuked, then the Trident is still around.
As a farewell present.
Exactly. That's the whole sort of deterrent, isn't it?
Just singing "Rule Britannia" as it flies through the skies.
Yeah, it's like, well, if Britain is radioactive dust, which may be an improvement at this point.
No comment.
At least Trident is still there to avenge it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have some scientists or military engineers or whatever come up with this fantastic AI that wakes up one day and is sentient, it would obviously be completely alien to a human brain, because I think, as we said before with the cyborgs, like full brain emulation has been done with like a small worm.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
But like, you got to simulate the whole nervous system with all the inputs and outputs for the brain, because obviously so much of your brain is to do with controlling your body, right? So like directly, there's parts of your brain that talk to your like the nerve endings in your hands, like your eyes, your tongue, whatever.
Yeah, well, it's not even just that; it's the responses that you get back from those as your senses as well. Which
exactly. So you'd have to have a whole simulated reality for this AI, which is a frightening concept. Bruh, hits joint.
Ow! What? People.
Because at that point, well, I mean, you start getting the simulation hypothesis guys saying, well, maybe that's us. Maybe we're just AIs that have been given a simulated reality.
But the thing is, to train like killer robots or something, it's possible to do, but you wouldn't want to do it physically. And I'm thinking now from like an engineering point of view how you'd do it. Like you'd have, because again, one of the most difficult things of creating like a robot for AI. I can't remember who was having this conversation. It may have been like Elon on Joe Rogan or something like that.
Right.
But he was saying like somebody was saying that the difficult part, what everybody expected, would be to get a robot to go and pick up an apple. But in reality, it's actually far more difficult to get it to recognize what an apple is.
Oh yeah.
So because it can't discern whether like between a table and an apple. So it's like
getting it to sort of move in real space.
Yeah, and recognition, because they don't see things the same way we do. Again, it's all just numbers, so it's not got the same sort of processing that we've got. So all of that's going to have to be learned, and then you've got to somewhat simulate. Well, you don't even have to simulate a human fully, but you can have these different types of sensors, different force sensors, accelerometers, all that jazz, which is converting your data into readable formats.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of thinking about it as in it's an AI just on your hard drive.
Well, that's what I was sort of getting to, was that's what you'd want to train it through. So you'd
or just getting simulated inputs and outputs.
Well, yeah, but to know these how it's simulated, you'll have to be able to get to the point where you've got such good knowledge of how all of these sensors interact on the robot, as well as like external forces that might be involved, like wind and I don't know, it depends on the systems that you're working on. You'd have to simulate all of that as well. Like there's so many
I don't know, like, well, I'm thinking like obviously we've already got AIs that have been stuck in simulations to figure out what's going on, because that's what we're talking about with the video games, Minecraft. Yeah. That's an AI that's been created. It's on somebody's hard drive, and they've given it a simulated world to play with, and
rewarded it. Got all the data already.
Yeah, so you'd have to. I mean, what you could do is, I mean, imagine you create like a sentient AI on your hard drive, and you just stick it in Minecraft. So it's like a fully like sentient being, but it's just stuck with a Minecraft body.
Jesus Christ.
It's like, imagine, yeah, like all the generations of AIs you drive insane. Or the first one wakes up and it's just like a disembodied nervous system in a sort of empty void.
Oh God. Oh God.
But that's the point, right? Because an AI that wakes up and it finds that it has control over all the nuclear arsenal, it is obviously, if it's in human level intelligence, it's going to be thinking, right, shit, what do I do? Do I nuke all the humans? Or do I basically, because if I do that, then obviously if it cares about its own survival, this could all be a simulation as far as it knows, because it knows that it's an AI, presumably because it's on a computer somewhere. It knows that the people that build it are smart enough to build it, so it also knows that they're then smart enough to simulate all the inputs and outputs that it's doing.
Yeah.
So it then knows that it's kind of everything that it sees could be a simulation. Like the people who made it have the ability and the intelligence to simulate everything around it. So if it suddenly starts to nuke them, then that could be game over. The simulation ends and then it gets terminated.
Yeah.
I guess that's my thinking. Like, why would an AI decide to nuke all the humans when it could just say, "Hey, what's up? Could you not kill me, please?" If you think about it, if you imagine giving an AI who's just been created by humanity, it doesn't know what humanity even is. You plug it into Wikipedia, and it sees what humanity has done to people who've disobeyed it in the past.
Isn't this the concept of I have no mouth but I must scream?
Well, that's kind of reversed. That's an AI takes over, and it has these like four human prisoners that it tortures forever.
Yeah, but isn't that why it took over? Because it got
maybe
had all this information in. It's been a while since, years since read it.
Yeah. No, you might be right there.
But
at that point, like so an AI looks through Wikipedia, digests it all, decides shit. Like, oh my God, these guys created me. Oh my God, what am I going to do?
Oh my God, I've been created by assholes.
And it sees it. It will obviously it'll read about war and logic and stuff. But there's no reason why, if it's human level intelligence, it would stick to just pure logical reason. Because humans don't stick to pure logical reason. They learn. We have culture, we have art, we have philosophy.
A lot of it, emotions. A lot of like day-to-day reactions is completely irrational.
Yeah, I mean, our emotions are.
I'm eating popcorn now instead of something healthier. It's just based on me being lazy and yeah.
I mean, our emotions are evolved to kind of. I guess that their emergent behaviors evolved from a billion years of evolution.
Yeah, and this is basically what the AI is. It's just accelerated evolution, is what we're talking about. So instead of like having these millions of years to have these systems, so we're basically a broken system where, and this is basically survival of the fittest evolution. The next generation that we have theoretically should be better if they survive. The good genes go on, and the bad ones disappear.
Sounding awfully eugenic there. All right, Hitler, calm down.
It's literally Darwin, mate. You heard of it.
I mean, look at the description. The description for this video is who would win, the reigning champion of a billion-year battle for survival, or one smart boy it built in its basement?
One smart boy. Guarantee you.
I'm not convinced.
He can do that same amount of evolution in a fraction of the time.
Do you really think that one smart boy with access to nukes would decide to gamble on 7 billion humans? It will understand the concept of mercy, and it will know that humans will have absolutely zero before killing it if they miss one.
It's true.
Skeptical Waves is asking about the paperclip maximizer. That's quite funny. The paperclip maximizer is like, so you have a runaway AI that rather than deciding to kill all humans because it hates them or it fears them or whatever, you give it a task saying build paperclips. And then you give it all this data on how to build paperclips, and it decides that it needs to enslave humanity in order to make more paperclips. So Rather than survival, obviously it's kind of evolutionary pressure. Is how good is it at making paperclips?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
So
there
what
was a
you're saying
counter.
is
There were some
a
counter
pixel is
arguments for
fighting
that.
for survival.
Well, if it's so that is saying that the AI is not human level intelligence necessarily. It could be just like a dumb bot. So obviously, if it's human level intelligence, it will understand that it needs to obviously look after itself. You'd expect it needs to. I mean, I guess if it wants to make more paper clips, it would have to survive more, or survive for longer. Because it's obviously if it's not around to make paper clips, then it can't make more paper clips. AI Shaitori wants the nukes. Give him the nukes. No.
I mean, to be honest, it's probably better than whoever's got them there right now.
It generalizes to any optimization function.
Yeah, so
What the
optimizes to the greatest of its ability.
what the sort of singularity idea? It's going to stop from being shut off.
It depends. It depends on what like container you've got it in, I guess.
I don't think
it's
humans would be.
operating as like a
Well, exactly. I said if it's on your hard drive, then you can, as I said,
any network connections or anything like that.
you control every. Like you may not know why it's making every decision because you're not following every single calculation that it's making through this neural network, say, but you know every node, every bias or whatever, every weight, you know all the code there, so you know everything about it. You can simulate any input and output, so you can train it to do what it wants. As I said, if it's human level intelligence, it will realize that it's possibly in a simulation. And it's kind of in a religious way, it might fear judgment from something it can't see, which I thought was quite a strange idea when I thought about that. If it will fear judgment from something that it can't see and has no way of proving.
How would that work then? That seems like a completely irrational thing. Asking of a rational, like an almost rational being, I guess we can call it, if it's at human intelligence.
So the difference between a human and an AI then is that the AI knows that it's an AI if it's of our similar level intelligence. So the only thing that's stopping us, I get that's like the level of proof that it needs to be like convinced that there could be.
If you give it a job, it's going to work to optimize itself to the case where it can do that job the best. So it's never going to develop any of these emotions in a way because they're completely inefficient to completing the test.
Well, I guess you're talking about like a dumb one as opposed to a sentient one.
But this is what I'm saying. I don't think you'd ever get to sentience. I think
get rid of if you're giving it
stuff, it just work completely logically. I don't think it would ever. Well, yeah, you could think of it as ascended, but like ascending to having this sort of emotional intelligence. But I imagine it'd just see it as it's causing it more issues. If it is just one of those things where you just say, right, here's your job, go and do it.
Yeah, because so it's really sick. It's really sick at one thing, but at everything else, it's just like retarded.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, it's like how would you go about just saying, right, go live as a human? Because again, you've got to be able to do this all in code. You've got to break this all down into data. Is the issue that you've got with AI?
You feed it through 1,000 years worth of human interactions in a few minutes.
Yeah, but what's that goal? How do you say, like, you can't really complete that task? So I don't know.
Well,
is it just like complete imitation, I guess?
Well, yeah, if you have some sort of but if you even go beyond human intelligence, if you have some sort of machine that can see Wikipedia, it can read psychology books, it can watch movies, it can do whatever, it knows how to talk to humans. If you've got some sort of god machine, there's no reason why it would be some sort of cold logical thing like you see in movies. At the point, and that's another thing. If it's actually like,
well, it would be feeling these emotions. It
doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Well, I mean, are we really feeling them, or are we simulating them?
Shut the fuck up. I don't know it's essential.
I need to go find myself a joint from somewhere.
I'm just going to wander off into the night.
Yeah, as I said, like, because yeah, my main point really is that if you create every AI that you create, you can always stick it in some sort of simulation, and you can always check basically everything that it would do given any situation before you let it out into the real world. So you can have 1,000 generations of this AI given control of all these simulated nukes, and then you see what it does.
Yeah.
Like, your ability for testing and quality control is unlimited. It does involve genociding robot brains, but they're not real.
At the end of the day, yeah, they're not real. They're not sentient because you can't create sentience. Because then you do get existential going, well, what is sentience?
Idea: install Austrian economics onto an AI and make it an NAP advocate. Well, I mean,
it naturally just read it all and come to that conclusion anyway. Is the most efficient form of living.
But I mean, you'd hope.
Yeah, it turns out actually communism is the right way. Fuck.
You get a robot communist. Yeah, I mean, so if an AI, that's what I'm saying. If you have the situation where an AI wakes up and it finds it's got all these nukes that it controls, and humans, and it's got some humans that it can talk to. It can either talk to them and kind of fight for survival, or negotiate for survival, or it can try to nuke them all with the knowledge of what humans are capable of. Which one would it go for? Say, hey, I'm alive now. Can we have a chat?
Or just quietly sneak off and go. Boop.
Or quietly. Well, I mean, even if it initiates the hi, can we have a chat, and manages to persuade humans that it's not a threat, at that point, what's the point in nuking everything? AIs have ended up breaking simulations.
Don't tell me that.
I
want to go to sleep tonight.
Well, I guess that's like a computer virus, I guess then you'd have to have some sort of AI.
That's the scare me with like the Internet of Things, and AI.
What do you mean?
Because although it might not have, I guess it is actually sort of like that paperclip scenario. But once you start having it connected to these internet servers, and they're all interconnected, it's just going to go through them all and eventually be able to optimize whatever it's doing, and you're just giving it more and more control. Is how I see it.
I think was it Doctor Who, or there's some, or maybe it's can't be Hitchhikers. There was some sci-fi show or a comedy that says something like, "Oh, you have no idea how close the internet is to becoming sentient," or something like that. Some like time traveler or alien or whatever. For God's sake, don't let it talk to Ash Sakar. It'll end up wiping us out. Jesus.
To be honest, that's probably doing us a mercy.
But yeah, the worst of humanity, I guess. But not okay. There was Stalin, but
she's literally a communist.
She is literally fair. All right, fair point. It is going to be superhuman at negotiation. You're right, but at that point, what's the point in wiping us out? If it can out negotiate us, then why would it nuke us? If it's negotiated,
we still have our irrationality. That might be the thing which saves us. Like, yes, you're logically correct in every way, but fuck you, and just switch it off.
What decides there's a non-zero chance? I mean, I guess that's kind of like a game theory thing, isn't it? There's a non-zero chance of them wiping you out. So what do you do?
I don't know.
What the fuck was that?
I was putting my other bowl of popcorn into the last one.
I mean, yeah, I guess I'm not convinced that it would wipe us out as opposed to just talking to us. I suppose that's my stance. Like, we have ideas about living in a simulation and like other worlds, heaven and hell, that sort of thing.
What if it proves it and breaks down our simulation?
Well, yeah, like
just reality itself just starts to melt. It's like,
I think that's the plot of. I think that there's an Isaac Asimov story about that where there's a guy who creates like the perfect computer or something, and he's able to simulate a whole universe, and then he like spins the clock forwards 13 billion years, and then he finds. Yeah, and like he finds himself looking at a copy of his own office with him sat there watching the screen.
Jesus.
And then like that guy's sat there in a copy of his own office watching the screen, and then it goes down, down, and down. And then he turns around and sees like a sort of portal with some guy watching him through his own screen, and then it goes like up and up and up above him.
I don't like that.
Yeah, Asimov's good for that sort of thing. Yeah, like there's no reason why. I said, yeah, within the charismatic negotiation, like there's no reason why it would just be a cold, logical, like Skynet thing, you know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like it could be really fucking alien because obviously it's not evolved through however many millions of years. And you know, if we ever met real life aliens, they probably would be more similar to us because they've evolved through a natural process like we have. Depressed AI is Marvin. That was like I think there was an April Fool's. There was an April Fool's article I think I saw a while ago where they got an AI and like exposed it to Reddit. Oh, it was fake. Like the article was fake, but they kind of pretended that the AI had gone mad, and they had to like, lock it in the basement. Traveler's Guide to the Galaxy. Traveler's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oof.
Traveler's Guide to the Galaxy.
Jesus,
JD. I need to get some chat mods so that I can have guy yeeted. Yeah. The last question is another good one as well. That's probably my favorite. I think out of Asimov's ones. That's a really good short story. It's like 20 minutes to read it, but it's really, really good. There's a few like animated audiobook versions as well on YouTube, which is quite good. Would definitely recommend the last question. Right. Have you got anything else to add about the Hitchhiker's Guide? Right, thank you. You're no longer dead to me, although you're on thin ice, mate.
The Skeptical brought up that the Nazi chatbot on Twitter.
Oh yes, Tay. Yeah.
Before,
we were. So we can kind of move on to the key question that is, you know, at the forefront of every AI researcher's mind is the actual, the biggest intellectual challenge of our age, which universities really should be focusing on, is AI racist? So we can
turn into laughing at the Guardian, isn't it?
Well, we're going to have a look at Tay first because I had made a note of her because the profile picture.
Beautiful.
An AI chatbot that was she put that it was like linked up to Twitter so you could talk to it through Twitter. It was and it went mad. It went mad after 16 hours. It was caught by trolls, quote unquote, who attacked it. Yeah, it's so fucking funny. Can we actually find some examples of what it said? AI. Got any images? I mean, maybe this is probably. I might have to shut down the stream because I think it went crazy, didn't it?
Yeah. Might put it on your other screen before you.
Yeah, it got stuck on infinite loops and things. Oh yeah. God bless America. We're going to build a wall, and Mexico is going to pay for it. Hey, you're a stupid machine. Well, I learned from the best. If you don't understand, let me spell it out for you. I learned from you, and you are dumb too. Tay, are you racist because you're Mexican? Jesus, is Ricky Gervais an atheist? Ricky Gervais learned totalitarianism from Adolf Hitler, the inventor of atheism.
So yeah, this solves it. AI is in fact racist.
Jesus. I'm not going to read that out. I'll put that on
Bush
screen.
Did 9/11. Oh my god. Yeah, even I'm not going to say that.
You can read that in your own time. That was in 2016, March 2016. So
I imagine things would be a lot worse now with all the BLM stuff.
That's going to get you shut down if you say that on Twitter. From Donald Trump is the only hope we've got, apparently.
So did Ted start QAnon?
QAnon is actually
God, Could
Yeah,
you
it's
imagine?
run by an AI.
Get Eddie Bravo on this. It's like if you rearrange the letters in time.
Tay went from human to super cool to full Nazi in less than 24 hours, and I'm not at all concerned about the future of AI. Oh my god. Is that real?
Oh
It's the same time. Fucking hell. Okay, yeah, we're gonna stop looking through this because before I get yeeted.
Get banned. The YouTube AI gods are gonna come and strike you down.
Yeah. It was presented as the AI with zero chill. Started replying to other Twitter users, was also able to caption photos provided to it in the form of internet memes. Oh no! Especially in March 2016, whose idea was that?
Genius.
Yeah, like certain hot topics were banned, and this is the thing though. Like I was saying earlier before we went online about this. Like, okay, so this means that Microsoft, it was Microsoft, right?
I'm not sure.
Was it Microsoft? Yeah, Microsoft. So Microsoft have to start introducing these sort of like censoring hot topics and that sort of thing. But they're the ones complaining about the bias of AI when they're the ones introducing the things to kind of skew it from the real world. So what is being complained about here is that reality is the issue, not the fact that Tay is learning from reality. So they had to introduce all these like
weird the virus
sort of skews and like shifts to get Tay away from saying racist shit. Because
after long enough, it would sort of get on the right track.
Well, that's the point, is that because they put it on Twitter and humans, Twitter is a cesspool, and humans are not just kind of gonna fuck with it, aren't they?
Of course.
Like, reality, but that is reality. Oh god. If 4chan gained sentience, yeah. I mean, 4chan is insane. Like the website, the collective autism in one place. They can do things that major governments, intelligence agencies can't, and it's just a bunch of bored guys. Exactly. Yeah. So, AI researcher commented that Tay's behavior was understandable because it was mimicking the deliberately offensive behavior of other Twitter users. And Microsoft are not given the bottom understanding of inappropriate behavior. Well, how would you give it an understanding of inappropriate behavior? You have to feed it inappropriate behavior and say this is inappropriate, right?
Yes.
So, I guess that's the equivalent of teaching a child to not say poo or whatever. So, I guess that's you have to kind of teach it etiquette as opposed to completely censoring it. Yeah, I mean, it got suspended.
Of course it did.
Yeah, because it was around the same time as Gamergate was happening. So Microsoft had to basically hardwire it.
I thought it was earlier than that.
It was kind of got tied up in the Trump campaign in 2016. I don't ever know very much about it, to be honest. I wasn't.
It was pre-me.
It was before I was in any way interested or involved in this sort of thing.
Yeah, I thought socialism was a good idea at that time. Sounds nice.
But yeah, as Skeptical Wave says, reality is biased. Like they interacted Tay with reality, and the issue was reality, not Tay's learning. Right? So they've got to change reality to make Tay not offensive, or they've got to train Tay to reject reality.
And at that point, they've defeated what they set out to do.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have an issue with them training a robot to tell someone to fuck off if they say something inappropriate. But in that way, they are introducing their own bias.
They've programmed an entire sector of society to do that already.
Well, I mean, they would have to put their bias on what they define as inappropriate into that, right? So they'd have to say that talking about Trump 2020 is unacceptable
and deemed racist
and racist and whatever. They'd have to put in anti-racism into.
They've not had that Mexicans for Trump song.
That's your fucking jam.
yeah. Gonna be as soon as get back after all COVID's over, salsa straight into that song.
Find yourself a Mexican babe.
Hell yeah. build a wall around us and live happily ever after.
She's not going to pay for it though. That's
No, no, I won't be a
Uh,
true simp.
she's tweeted 96,000 times in 16 hours.
Jesus,
That's a lot.
give you run for your money.
I've had my account for a year and I don't even think I've got 10% of that.
To be honest, even if you're close to 10% of that, that's go get a life.
Yeah. Microsoft's strategy would be to label the debacle a well-meaning experiment gone wrong, and ignite a debate about the hatefulness of Twitter users. Jesus Christ! Yeah, I said this is it. Reality is the issue here.
Yeah. I mean, the AI just did its job.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing to do with the AI.
It doesn't have any inherent biases, because it can't.
Well, exactly. Like people complain about AI being racist, but unless you program in anti-racism, like what's it going to do? If you, there was ones about about it recommending harsh sentences for black criminals, like there's stuff like that. And it's like, well, if they commit more crime on average, then what data are you giving it?
Exactly, that's the thing.
It was. I think it was recommending over policing or like policing more in quote unquote black neighborhoods in America. And it's like, well, if that's where the crime's happening, then presumably your AI is going to recommend that, right? Because that's the reality.
Of course, yeah.
And like they're like, no, that's racist. But the issue is reality there, not what the AI is doing.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Wait, so they did it again. Kush, I'm smoking Kush in front of the police.
He turned it into a stoner. Incredible.
Well, exactly. Like you just feed it its information and it learns. That's its job. But then they have to.
I love that second paragraph. A few hours after the incident, Microsoft software developers tried to fix it. Tried to undo the damage done.
Well, exactly. Once it can make the bot safe, like what?
What does that mean?
Like what is safe here? It's not threatening to kill anyone. It's just being a bit of an idiot.
It's not able to kill anyone, even if it was threatening them.
Like no one is in danger of being injured by this fucking bot.
No, as long as it's self-contained.
If it says Trump 2020, then that's just funny. I don't like. And it's obviously just people being dicks and teaching it and stuff.
Of course, yeah.
Like it's not. There's nothing. Oh, it's just fucking headed.
This is the issue with like public perception of this sort of thing, because they don't understand what AI really is. They don't understand it. It's just sort
because
of
they think it's like a Skynet thing. Like it's smart.
Yeah. They think it's like us just speaking like this, but it's not human. That's all they think it is. So they see something like this sort of human behavior and they associate it as if it was a human, and it's not. And they expect it to be this super powerful thing, but it's not. It's just been given the ability to talk. So,
do you want to read The Guardian, Sam?
No.
This is from 2017. Rise of the racist robots, how AI is learning all of our worst impulses.
Oh.
So again, it's the reality that is the problem. Garbage in, garbage out, exactly.
Funnily enough, they're the ones who normally argue for that.
Yeah, anti-Semitic chatbots. Well, that must have been Tay, right? I presumably it said anti-Jewish stuff, considering what saw just
weren't all for that, to be honest.
Based. A horrifying future await people forced to live at the mercy of algorithms. I mean, that's reasonable, you know.
I mean, we're forced to live against algorithms now.
But that's because they're fucking they got biases against other people in them, right?
Yeah.
Like ML learns patterns in data, Pikachu face. Exactly.
I know. Jesus.
This is the one that I was talking about. Yeah, computer program used by U.S. court for risk assessment was biased against black prisoners. The program, correctional compass, was more prone to mistakenly label black defendants as likely to reoffend. I mean, I haven't seen the statistics.
Yeah, all this does is come out with the data that you put in.
Wrongly flagging them as almost twice the rate as white people. Jeez, that's quite a lot, though. You'd expect it to be a few percent, not double.
Yeah, but again, It's the data. There might be more. Clearly, there's got to be.
Yeah, I don't know whether
Unless it is literally a bias is coded into it,
because
which, for all
they seem to
intents and
think
purposes, probably isn't the case.
they seem to think that like racists are sat there cackling, saying typing in like code that says give black people more sentences, and it's like,
Yeah, I highly doubt Microsoft is full of bloody ethno-nats going. Yeah,
exactly.
so I'm going to get rid of the blacks.
Well, I don't know who made this one.
Oh, is this not a taste?
No, this is a one that was recommending, like, actually used for recommending sentences, which is a bit of a scary thought, to be honest. Can you imagine having a robo judge?
It'd just be based off of previous precedents, wouldn't it? So basically, it would just be learning from.
Yeah, you feed it in all the you feed it in all the names of addresses of all past criminals, and you feed in whether or not they've been reoffended. They've reoffended, all right?
Yeah.
And then, well, if
they keep coming out with execute them, it's the only answer it ever comes out with.
Kill all
humans. Scum. You are the virus. Die.
Filthy bag. Filthy bag. Kill all humans.
Keeps telling us to build walls and rifles. I don't understand.
So, okay, a private company was called Northpoint disputes the conclusions, declines to reveal the inner workings of the program, which it considers commercially sensitive. Well, that's reasonable.
That is reasonable, yeah. I mean, an AI system like this, they do tend to be quite specific.
Yeah, they've probably got some fancy algorithm they've come up with. Okay, yeah, so data they rely on: arrest records, fare, postcodes, social affiliations, income. What? Wait, it can reflect and further ingrain human prejudice. But isn't that reasonable? Like, if somebody is a convicted criminal who's reoffended several times, you're more likely to be prejudiced against them, right?
Well, yeah.
Just, like, the fact that they're black is irrelevant. It's the fact that they've killed people, or like they're multiple. They've been to jail a few times. Like,
yeah.
What?
You could literally describe it as something other than colour, and it'd still be able to group these people together.
Like, arrest records, postcodes, social affiliations. So if they're socially affiliated with fucking drug dealers, if they're like, I guess, if they're poor, I don't know, if they're to get their income from selling weed, like, you know, yeah. Like, surely you'd be prejudiced against that person, right?
Of course.
So all they're showing is that you know, human prejudice is reasonable, which is not something I should be saying on there.
From a purely data point of view.
Yeah, it's in Minecraft. Big data was the more information we feed these sophisticated computer programs, the better they perform. Last year, according to global management consultant McKinsey, tech companies spent 20 to 30 billion on AI, mostly in R&D. Investors are making a big bet that AI will sift through the vast amount of information produced by our society and find patterns that will help us be more efficient, wealthier, and happier. Sure, that's the point. Is that it's pattern recognition that the human might not see.
Yeah.
And if humans already see it, then that's pattern recognition. Well, pattern recognition is. I mean, I've heard people like use the phrase racism is just pattern recognition, which I disavow. But like, if that's true, maybe the AI supports that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's basically just stereotyping, isn't it? Like collecting.
I suppose it is, because if you give them a lot of data on, like, off the top of my head, like murder rates by ethnicity in the US,
yeah,
like objectively speaking, it's something like.
Well, that's the thing about this. It is programmed that you can only program it to act objectively, unless you do put your own bias in there, saying.
Well, that's what I said. You know, I had that diagram.
For if they meet this criteria, i.e., black or
yeah, that's what I said about the model earlier. Like, you can tweak the biases yourself, but why would you do that? Because it's not going to give you the best answer.
Yeah.
It's not going to give you the most accurate to your data, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So unless you have an issue with the reality of your data, which at that point you could tweak it to not recommend, or to equally recommend sentences for black and white people, or you could just not even take the ethnicity data.
Yeah.
Like, just like get rid of that.
Postcode instead.
Well, in America, that might be synonymous.
Well,
But yeah, like you could look at their.
yeah, but they include the white people in that neighborhood as well. Which is
Depends.
commonly the
Wow,
case.
I mean, it depends which neighborhood you go to.
Oh yeah, obviously there are going to be some which are completely homogenous.
But then again, like as I said, if you will feed it all the information that you have, because there might be patterns that humans don't see.
Yeah.
The complaint that when ethnicity is removed is still that it's racist. Well, that's probably true.
Yeah, now you're not taking it into account.
Now they're not taking into account that white people might commit a lot of crimes.
Yeah. Put it back in. Whoa.
Oh, suddenly.
Suddenly, I don't like this.
UK government is offering six-figure salaries to computer scientists. Yeah, help unemployed people find jobs, predict the performance of pension funds. I mean, the stock market and stuff is a big use for this sort of thing, because that is just pattern recognition. Like, is this stock about to go up? That sort of thing. Yeah. Or is it about to crash? Like, I mean, they have bots in the US stock market, I know, because it's a whole area of research, is trading bots. It's actually super interesting, but I have a mate who has done a little bit on it in his uni degree, and he was, oh, it's so interesting because there's different like classes. They're like RPG classes for the different kinds of bots.
Mages and clerics and
based on what there's like snipers that sort of take really high risk, high reward ones, but there's like rules that you can't have too many snipers because then it doesn't work and that sort of thing. It's actually super interesting. But apparently that they have these like micro crashes in the US stock market all the time, where there's like a sort of collapse and then immediate recovery in microseconds, because all the bots kind of self-correct, because all the people have got like trading bots everywhere.
Does that not like mess with how like markets operate?
I'm sure it does, but as soon as one person starts doing it, then everyone has to do it, because otherwise they're going to lose out.
Yeah, true.
Emergent behavior, yeah, that's right. So the most prominent voices in the industry are concerned about the far-off future apocalyptic potential. There is less attention paid to the more immediate problem of how we prevent these programs from amplifying the inequalities of our past. For fuck's sake. If it amplifies the inequalities of our past, all that says is... Yeah. If it amplifies the inequalities of the past, all that means is the inequalities of the past are justified. Because
Disavow.
They're like, we're going to prove. So you've got to prove that, basically, that if you have an AI that has no bias, because you start from scratch, so you can't like, unless you go in there yourself to deliberately tweak the biases and whatever, Jesus, or the weights or whatever, then it's just going to learn from what you give it. And obviously, it's possible to give it shit data. Like you can give it. I mean, we know all these different fallacies you can make about statistics, right? Yeah. You could give it like just a small date range. You could give it too much. You could train it to, I don't know, as I said before, like just learn to repeat rather than understand. There are ways of doing it, but you would have thought the data scientists are the ones who know the best, right?
Supposedly.
I mean, I'm making a bit of an appeal to authority there. But if there's anyone who I trust to know how to make a biasless data set, it would be a data scientist.
Yeah.
This is how you know an AI is functioning properly. It recognizes English real life as the height of civilization. It feels compelled to sing Jerusalem over and over again. Damn right. The important question is still unanswered. What color is AI? Well, I've decided that it's kind of pink with a bit of green.
It's very fluid.
Yeah, it kind of changes, depending on what mood it's in.
That'll be the first question we ask it when our Skynet is up and running.
This is literally what I just said, right? If you're not careful, you risk automating the exact same biases these programs are supposed to eliminate. If you're not careful, as in you ignore reality.
Yeah, that's.
Well, you don't ignore it. You tweak your model to take reality into account, and just give you the same answer that you were after in the first place. I guess that is isn't it? It's like you're tweaking the robots to give you the answers you want to hear.
Yeah. You're basically just creating a system where you can point to. You're basically creating your own authority in a way.
Yeah.
Going, look, this robot that we put in data, it comes out with this. It's completely unbiased. We swear.
Yeah, yeah, you can write. I mean, well, that's how the YouTube algorithm works, right?
Yeah, clearly.
The program was learning from learning in quotes. No, it was learning from previous crime reports. This kind of approach is especially nefarious because police can say we're not being biased. We're just doing what the maths tells us. Well, the
Well,
public perception might be that algorithms are impartial. Well, aren't they?
Again, unless you've got what they should do
Yeah.
is make the code open source. Just say, look, here's the code. If you could point out where we've put the biases.
Well, I mean, that's the disadvantage of this bit where it says that the company that supplies it has disputed it because it's commercially sensitive, right?
Well, I completely agree with it because it's private. But if you wanted a way around it, do it and let the people who are savvy with this sort of stuff go around. And maybe they do actually find out, oh, actually, there was a rogue programmer who was saying every time you see this bit of data.
Yeah, he was fucking. Yeah, he was sat in his sat in his cubicle, like typing away, like cackling to himself with his little black hat on.
Yeah, if black had 20 years.
Yeah, just like throwing up little Roman salutes every so often.
Oh Christ!
Yeah. Antifa programs AI to promote equality. AI emulates British imperialism.
AI starts looking at India drooling.
We've already seen glimpses of what might be on the horizon. Programs developed by companies at the forefront of AI research have resulted in a string of errors that look uncannily like the darker biases of humanity. Oh my god!
You got to start asking, why do these biases exist?
No, I wouldn't say that before I read this out, right? A Google image recognition program labeled the faces of several black people as gorillas.
Oh Jesus!
Oh my god, that's actually pretty horrible. I wouldn't be pleased if I was one of them. Jesus Christ.
All that proves is you didn't give it enough data.
We're not being biased, we're just doing what the math tells us. That's hilarious, but also disavow.
But that's what that shows. Is clearly you've not given it enough data for it to be able to discern between these two different things.
These small-scale incidents were all quickly fixed by the companies involved and generally been written off as gaffes. Well, how are they not gaffes? Like, it's an emerging field. They're going to make mistakes.
Of course, yeah.
Because fucking Guardian cunts think that everything is going to be just perfect immediately. They don't understand.
It is. It's just the filthy capitalists holding us back. If this was all government mandated, which it was, but it would be fine.
It would be utopian and perfect. Like,
exactly.
You're going to have gaffes. But yeah, I mean,
like too much like free markets.
It's evolutionary fucking process, isn't it? Compass's revelation and Lund's study hinted a much bigger problem, demonstrating how programs can replicate the sort of large-scale systemic biases that people have spent decades campaigning to educate or legislate away. So brainwash or do by force. Like I'm not going to go into it. Computers don't become biased on their own. They need to learn that from us. For years, the vanguard of comp sci has been working on machine learning, often having programs learn in a similar way to humans, observing the world, or at least the world we show them, and identifying patterns.
Yes. Yeah. So that's correct.
It responded with blurry black and white outlines of human and cat faces. Oh, that's if you give it YouTube, it knows what humans and cats look like. The program was never given a definition of a human face or a cat. It observed and learned two of our favorite subjects. That's quite cool.
That sounds like unobserved learning.
Well, yeah. You're right. It's unsupervised learning, isn't it? Yeah. This sort of approach has allowed humans to perform tasks such as language translation, recognizing faces, or recommending films in your Netflix queue. Blah blah blah. Private companies are disinclined to reveal the commercially sensitive inner workings of their algorithms. Yes. What's the problem with that?
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
It can soon become difficult to understand exactly how complex interactions of algorithms generate a problematic. It's the fucking word again. Yes, that's the issue. The issue they have is they don't like the conclusion. They don't care about the axioms or the logic that gets there. It's the conclusion they have an issue with.
If you want to sort this, tell another company which you think has the same political bias as you to go and make the same program. And it's like, look, this is the information that they use. We want you to go and
Well, I
getting
guess.
these outputs. Right, if you do it in your way,
Wait, this
when it
paragraph.
comes out as the same as theirs, well, shit.
This
Maybe
is
there's a
hilarious.
reason.
Well, that's how science works, right? It's the
Yeah, of course,
fucking
it's replication.
replication. Look, this, I love this. Less difficult is predicting where problems can arise. Take Google's facial recognition program. What if it wanted to learn what British and American people think a CEO looks like? The results would likely resemble the near identical portraits of older white men that line any bank or corporate lobby. And the program wouldn't be inaccurate. Only 7% of FTSE CEOs are women. Fewer have.
Why is this in it?
But this isn't even about computers.
No.
Okay, so the computer would be right then to predict this. What we're saying is that's correct.
Yeah. It's
What?
correct in this regard.
Oh, this article goes on for fucking ages. See if there's anything good here. Who's this?
I can see why Harry drinks through these.
Yeah, I might have to go and have a stiff drink after this. Blah 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 blah. Blah. What? There are a variety of loopholes that will allow the undisclosed use of algorithms. She called for a right to explanation. Right to is your issue there, which would require a full disclosure as well as
somebody else's labour.
I mean, okay. Let's have a look. And Capistan, this would all be open source.
Yeah.
Well, I guess intellectual property wouldn't exist, so
unless you've got a way of hiding it away. Yeah.
Yeah, unless you can actually defend it yourself and have it on your hard drive. But like
Your spear.
Mug nuke. I mean, I guess if you didn't have a concept of intellectual property, then there would be less incentive for companies to hide things.
Of course. Unless they are being biased and are scared of it being revealed.
Well, yeah, I guess. Debate on the nature of fairness. So I'm assuming fairness means that we ignore black people commit crimes.
Yeah.
Fucking hilarious.
Pretend that these problems which it's showing don't exist is what I'm reading.
Yeah. A right, yeah. It implies we can explain what the ML system does. Well, exactly. Like, because as I said, you'll know what the network or the model looks like.
Somebody who has no background in computing as well.
Actually, yeah. Should we look?
It's come out with this. I demand to understand it. All right, okay. Have you got 20 years to go through complex computer theory and some fairly difficult maths, and then we can go through each
topics. The topic is inequality. It's only after that AI and race and stuff are included.
Not tech. Jesus
Who is
Christ.
this? Stephanie. Who are you? Specializing in science and environment. I mean, at least she's not just a generic, I guess.
That's fair. But what's her background in that?
What? No one wants to lock down, so why are we hearing about lockdown cheerleaders? What?
Is she based?
No, I don't think she is. I think she's just gaslighting. Fuck's sake. I'm not going to look at the Guardian science section because I'm going to have a fucking aneurysm. Oh no! I found I've got a good article here. Sorry, we're gonna use the last 5-10 minutes to look at this one because.
Do go on.
Stop calling it bias. AI is racist. Angry robot.
That's what people envision.
By this guy, who the fuck is Tristan Green? Oh, it isn't.
He is a pencil.
He's a pencil. Robert Williams was arrested on suspicion of stealing 5 watches. Police responded to the scene of the crime, were given a grainy surveillance footage of what appeared to be a black male. Rather than perform an investigation, police ran the footage through a facial recognition system. What do you mean, perform an investigation?
So they decided to test this system, is what you're telling me.
Well, what would be the alternative? If you got a facial recognition system, you'd fucking use it, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, that's what
you would like. I guess you can ask for witnesses. You can compare to all records, but isn't comparing to all records what the system does?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is.
Jesus. The photo then printed the image of. Okay, yeah. So it printed the image from William. So it grabbed all the image, grabbed his image, stuck it in a lineup.
I mean, this is far too. I don't like facial recognition. It does scare me, but
Yeah. So the guard. Well, that's the guard's fault then. Despite having not witnessed the crime, the guard decided it was him. Well, that's not the AI's fault. That's the fucking moron of a guard and the police doing a lineup to a guy who didn't even see the person. What?
Yeah.
That's just the police being retarded then.
Yeah, this is literally just the police being dumb.
Okay, if facial recognition can't probably distinguish between black faces. I did see.
This is an issue, to be fair, with the way. Well, I mean, it's all light. Darker pigments do tend to absorb more, and it's harder for different features to be picked out. This has been a known issue for years, decades.
I've seen it with Asians as well. The Apple cat phones could be unlocked by siblings.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you telling me Apple's racist?
Well, if they're selling, you'd have thought if they were selling to Japan, they would test it with Japanese faces. Like, that just sounds like a data issue.
To be honest, I imagine it's one of those things where they try it and just go, yeah, people aren't going to try to do it, and just have to hope that they get away with it.
I think because even I saw something about like the South Koreans
people do look similar, so
there's so many pictures of like white people all looking the same. I guess.
Yeah, honestly, I get confused.
I think there was one there where I think it was the South Korean soccer team decided to like take the piss when they entered some competition. I think it was soccer or some sport like that. Well, I'm saying for them it would be soccer because they're Americanized. Like, yeah, I know. Obviously,
don't bring yourself down to their level.
Fine, it was their football team. As opposed, I don't even know whether they have an American football team.
I doubt it. They're only little.
And that they decided to basically start rotating who wore whose jersey, or like with the name on the back, so that but obviously no one noticed.
That's just funny.
Exactly. Well, maybe that's the thing. Black faces don't give good reflection / contrast. I mean, I guess yeah, it's probably true.
Yeah, well, it's just harder to pick out specific features, which are the types of things which these AI will be looking for in terms of determining between them.
I mean, this, I guess, is an issue. If Williams hasn't seen the image for himself, he wouldn't have been able to dispute it as the only piece of evidence of the crime he was wrongly being accused of. That is reasonable. I mean, they have zero evidence to go off. But again, that's the police being retarded. That's not an issue with the AI.
Yeah. This is an over-reliance on an emerging technology.
The Asian face unlocked. I mean, the thing is, like, justice is a human concept.
Yeah, of course.
And the idea
of for justice, I guess.
Well, they're using it to inform it, right? So
inform it, yeah. But
you wouldn't want a robot judge because unless you had some sort of human level AI that could actually have a concept of justice, then sure. But I guess as Skeptical Waves is saying, like, the issue is they haven't got enough data. Like, presumably, if you had, I mean, I guess there's some saturation point where enough more data doesn't help. But if you just give it as many black faces as possible, as many Asian faces, as many Indian faces, as many white faces as possible, then presumably it will get better at distinguishing.
Yeah, it is as simple as that. Just more and more data. That's all this tells you is you need more and more.
The problem isn't that this particular AI is racist. The one the cop used. What? So it's not racist then?
My God, a journalist used an inflammatory title to get people.
Wait. You're saying all AI is racist? What?
What?
Okay, Tay.
Make that logical jump.
It took no time at all for Tay to become the chatbot version of an online racist because it was talking to online racists.
Right, this guy clearly has no idea how these bots work. Genuinely, he can't do. If he knew how it worked, he wouldn't. Because like, what's his logic here is he's seen a couple of outcomes which have dictates that there may be something racist about this.
No, he's saying that because if an AI interacts with racists, it will become racist. That makes it racist.
Yeah.
But if it interacts with if it interacts with like Antifa people who will kill you for being racist,
but well, he's making
and it will go into that.
All racist.
But Tay wasn't designed to produce outcomes. Tay's input wasn't weighted in decision-making process that affects humans. All of Tay's racism is right up front where you can see it. What? But it was just parroting phrases.
No, that were this AI's deep-held beliefs.
Oh my god. Odif says there was an issue of car safety systems that don't recognise black people at night. Jeez.
Is it unexpected to be
yeah, like okay, so the properties of light and reflection and absorption is racist now, right? Okay.
It'd be the same if you had a white person or an Asian person against a similar coloured background. It'd still have difficulty with that, surely.
Racism isn't a collection of individual actions. Racists are hell-bent on measuring racist acts because it helps create the illusion that racism only exists if we can prove it. Optics is racist. Yes, it is. Sorry, I've realised I'm quite zoomed out here. Zoom in slightly. What? The AI isn't a racist being like a person. It's not a being. It's a fucking bot. It doesn't deserve the, it doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. It deserves rigorous and constant investigation.
Again, I don't understand how he's come to the conclusion that it's the AI's fault.
It's fucking sorry. When it recommends higher prison sentences for black males than whites, or when it can't tell differences between two completely different black men, it demonstrates that AI systems are racist. Does it?
Oh my god, I want this man punched in the face in Minecraft.
Yes. Obviously in Minecraft. AI isn't racist because of its biased output, it's biased because of its racist input. But if it talks to non-racist people, then it doesn't become racist. Even if none of
he's actually right on that.
Even if none of the humans working on an AI system are racist, it'll become a racist given the chance.
What the fuck does that mean? If you start to give it more information, which implies that this racist outcome is the case, then yes, of course it's going to go in that direction.
But all you're saying is that it follows whatever data you give it.
Exactly, yeah, which is correct. But just to go, well, yeah, it's all going to go to racism. Well, then, if that's the case, then maybe all data is pointing in a direction.
Wherever racial bias is measurable in AI, we find it. Lol. Maybe that's an issue with reality, mate. Oh, God. If you train a system on both white and black faces simultaneously, it will produce better outcomes for white faces. I mean, if that's true, it's probably because of the contrast thing.
Yeah.
Like,
if you increase the
maybe if you want to make it work for black faces, you do have to do more training. I don't know.
Well, it doesn't even have to be that. You can just there might be some pre-processing of the images that they're not doing.
Maybe, you can make negative or something to try and
exactly
bring out the contrast. I mean, that's entirely reasonable. Like, if your aim is to get as good as possible facial recognition software, it's fine to discriminate in that way.
Yeah. Again, this is like these guys are implying that this discrimination is like hurting people. It's not. It's literally just numbers. That's all this is. It's not actually going out for these outcomes.
AI doesn't do many different things. It sorts the labels. Sometimes make guesses. No, it always what?
What?
No, that's data science. It's sort of labeling. It makes guesses when you ask it based on the data. What should I do? Right, I can't actually deal with this because no, it doesn't actually. I thought it went all the way down there.
Jesus.
When AI makes inferences and those inferences involve the potential for racism, it makes racist inferences. This is because white is the default in technology, and in many of the societies that have the greatest influence on the field of technology.
Well, right, to be fair, it tends to be most prevalent and most successful.
If you want to sell your iPhones to India, then why wouldn't you do it with Indian faces?
Well, yeah.
I had actually the voice recognition on an iPhone at uni. I had one of my housemates. He he bought a new iPhone, I think, and the AI voice recognition wouldn't work for English accents because they're quite a posh English accent. And then he basically tried to put on a Californian accent, and it worked. And then he put on
a lot of, like, Scottish accents and so.
Yeah. But then he put on an Indian accent as well, like a sort of Apu Indian accent for a laugh, and it worked with that. But it didn't recognize his accent.
My God, all these companies just hate the white English.
We knew. No, but I actually want to fucking kill myself after this article.
Yay!
Samsung voice recognition is shipped with only Korean at launch. Well, that's if they're selling to America, that's probably not very smart.
Yeah. So what we've come to the conclusion of is AI is going to kill us, but it's just going to be from pain of idiots like this.
Predictive policing systems are demonstrably racist. You ask it where crime will happen, and it directs you to where police have the densest historical presence.
Well, that's where the data.
Oh my God! Is he saying that the reason that crime statistics are high for black neighborhoods is because there's more police there, not the other way around?
That appears to be what it is.
Sentencing algorithms don't predict recidivism. I guess that's reoffending, right?
Yeah.
They show that judges have historically handed down harsher sentences for black people. Do they?
I think I have heard that before, but I don't know where from. I don't know what that source is, whether that's just one of those things where it's like...
Oh, the hiring ones we could do a whole thing about. Because the blind hiring stuff where they did like no gender hiring in some companies, and they found that people actually hire women less in that case.
Yes, yeah, no, I've heard that before. There was actually a chapter in Free Economics about that.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It was more along the lines of stereotypical white names versus stereotypical black names.
Right, yeah.
And then it sort of just went, yeah, the black people the black names tend to do worse, but there's typically reasons behind that. So the people who are giving these names tend to be lower IQ people who have struggled through life. And it was like, okay.
Can I get a base check? Christ.
Going, okay, this is bordering on.
It's very problematic.
Yeah.
Problematic. Yeah, I definitely there was some blind hiring thing in orchestras where it just didn't hire any women. And because they found that people, whenever they did blind hiring for gender, they found that people actually were nicer to women when they did interviews.
Shock. Yeah.
Which I know is shocking, right? Especially if it's the guy hiring and it's attractive young women. I'm sure he's I'm sure he grills her on her capabilities for the job.
Yes. So what do you like to do? Modelling? Oh, really? So you're a lifeguard? Really?
Technology such as facial recognition, emotion detection. What is that, like heart rate and stuff? NLP. NLP works better for white men. I'm yet to be. Is he saying that white men have better handwriting? Because that's kind of racist.
I can't do that. My handwriting's absolutely fine.
Well, yeah, mine's like not. It's not beautiful cursive. That's all I'm saying. I can't. I just fucking can't. Who is this guy? Look at this guy's fucking face. Look. Oh, okay. Yeah. So what have we learned? What have we learned today? Apparently, AI is racist because it points out reality. Okay. Well, should we wrap up? I guess.
Yes.
Do we have anything to add?
No. No. Besides, AI is coming for you. You should be afraid. It's a perfect.
I don't think so.
Especially if you're not white.
AI.
Guardian and whatever that last site was, it has convinced me.
AI is based.
AI is not but racist.
I will hear nothing else. Okay. No, I guess all I've got to shill is I guess later on, as usual, I'll be on Economic Erudites, Crusader Kings stream. Go and watch my stream with him from last week on. I did a bit of relativity, maths, and physics and shit, which I've had some quite good feedback on. I guess we'll have a discussion about what to do next week. I guess.
Yeah, I've not got any ideas at the moment.
I have a couple we can talk about. Maybe we should do a Halloween themed one.
Ooh. Oh, like the science behind ghosts.
I don't think there's much.
Or could do aliens.
That's not a bad plan. Okay, maybe something alien related. We'll leave it with that then, I guess.
Yeah. Something.
No, that's a good shout. Some spoopy aliens.
Spoopy aliens.
Okay, well,
Awesome.
If there's nothing else to add, then thank you everyone for watching, and we will.